Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Frog Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for post the October 2022 ban list. With the latest ban list, we were given Substitute a limit to 1 on the ban list. It's been a while since it's been off the ban list, but with it, we also lost Ronin Totem, so I figured an update was due for the Frog deck, just for the overall playstyle. We'll be going for the mishmash of all the many different frogs that were meant to be in this deck, being a pure frog deck. It uses Death Frog, you name it, all the many combos, Death Croaking that you're meant to do with this deck. And Substitute definitely does help with that play style altogether, and just being able to special summon back all the different Aqua monsters and still being able to utilize Totally Awesome for as long as we can with this deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So fresh off the ban list, we have Substitute at 1. You contribute 1 monster to special summon 1 frog monster from your deck, except for Frog the Jam. Frog monsters, except Frog the Jam, cannot be destroyed by battle, so it's a protection card, but it's also not a once per turn for that special summon. And I've noticed that this play to get out Death Frog is actually a lot more, quicker and consistent than having to rely on Tadpole for the tribute summon special summon of Death Frog, which I'll get to in just a bit. But yep, we just have the 1 Substitute to work with. We're also running still the 3 Swap Frog. Aside from the Substitute play, definitely one of the best setup cards in the deck. Just being able to special summon this card and then normal summon Substitute gives us our 2 monsters needed for the tribute for Substitute on the field. And Swap Frog can also set up Substitute in the graveyard for you, even just to special summon back onto the field. I also run 3 Dupe Frog, one of the best frogs to summon off of Totally Awesome for more of a protection play. With this card, it gives you the option for making it the attack target. This card's name becomes Death Frog. While on the field, monsters your opponent control cannot target monsters for attacks, except for this one. And when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add 1 frog monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand, except for Dupe Frog. So being a big search for the good majority of the many different frogs we run in this stack. You definitely want 3 of those, so you have that option and defense card to use, but also being able to count as your Death Frog on the field works very well when we're trying to get those 3 Death Frogs for Death Croaking also. I also run 3 Unifrog with this card. It can attack your opponent directly, and when this card successfully attacks directly, if you control a frog monster other than Frog the Jam or Unifrog, you can destroy 1 spell or trap card your opponent controls. So what's great about Unifrog is the fact that it can attack directly, but also it can be powered up with cards like Wetlands, giving it 1200 attack, so making it a 1600 attack point monster that can attack your opponent directly. The 400 isn't so scary, but once you boost up the power thanks to Wetlands, it gets all the more scary because that's a pretty big amount of damage that 1 frog could be doing against your opponent. For more of the setup and bounce power, I run 3 Flip-Flop Frog. Once per turn, you can flip this card to face down defense position. When this card is flipped face up, you can return monsters your opponent controlled to the hand up to the number of face-up frog monsters you control. So this, once again, bounce power, and the fact that we can swarm the field with frogs pretty easily makes it a very good card for that setup, just being able to flip it, and if it's the turn you haven't actually summoned it, you can flip it back face up, and then have your bounce power right then and there. Being that this is a pure frog deck and we're using all kinds, I also run the 3 Death Frog. Normally would have to rely on Tadpole for the special summon, because when this card is tribute summoned successfully, you can special summon Death Frog from your hand or deck up to the number of Tadpole in your graveyard. But in this deck, we're relying on Substitute to special summon out the many different Death Frogs, since there is no limit to the level of what the frog monster has to be, thanks to Substitute. So with it, we'll use that for the special summon of the Death Frogs onto the field, giving us a 1900 attack point monster, which we can use on the field for some pretty big attacks, or like I said, the Death Croaking combo, with the last frog for the main deck being 1 Trade Toad. Once per turn, you contribute 1 Aqua monster to select 1 frog monster from your graveyard, except for Frog the Jam, and special summon that monster. So this is just more for the graveyard setup, giving us a frog monster back from the graveyard. So even if you summon out Swap Frog, it gives you another mill to the graveyard to use with this card, or a potential bounce to the hand for another normal summon. And that is it for the main deck monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. I run 3 Wetlands. This is definitely a field spell you want to set up pretty quickly, because all Aqua type water level 2 or lower monsters gain 1200 attack, so it can boost up even your options for your Aqua monsters, including Substitute, giving it a 1300 attack point boost, so pretty powerful with that setup. Same with Trade Toad and any other ones. It doesn't affect the Death Frog, sadly, since they're level 5, but still, these cards will be at 1900 attack to begin with, while the other ones needed the definite boost to help for any of the attacks they'll do, especially with, like I said, Unifrog, since this card can attack directly. And I also run 2 Death's Croaking. You can only activate this card when there are 3 face-up Death's Frog on your side of the field. Destroy all cards on your opponent's side of the field. Wiping out their entire board can definitely be a big play against them. If you have the 3 Death's Frog, then you can hit them for some pretty big damage. Or even just having your Dupe Frog count as 1. So if you get 2 out in the field, and then your Dupe Frog, you have the destruction ready to go with these 2 cards. I only run 2 though, so you don't open them up too early, because it could be a dead draw if you don't have the play ready to go. I also run 3 Water Hazard. Swarming the field with frogs is a very important part of the deck. So once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can special summon 1 level 4 lower water monster from your hand, just giving you that water monster as a resource on the field. With cards like Swap Frog, there's really no limit like the Cyber Dragon play where you have to have no monsters. You just have to be able to discard a monster to special summon Swap Frog onto the field. So you can use Water Hazard to special summon an additional water monster onto the field, and then just go from there with the rest of the Swap Frog play. For more special summoning from the graveyard using the cards that Swap Frog can send to the graveyard, I also run 3 Surface. You target a level 3 or lower Aqua monster in your graveyard, special summon it in defense. Just filling up the field for the Substitoad is once again a play I mentioned before you want to do, and this card can even just special summon Substitoad since it's a level 1 Aqua monster back onto the field. For more recycle power, I also run 2 Salvage, just so you can add Swap Frog back to your hand. We're relying on not being able to use Ronin Totem anymore, so we have to go with all the special summons we can rely on with the graveyard play, even if it means we have to use Swap Frog for an extra deck summon, and then add it back for our hand to reuse, which makes Salvage very useful because of that. I also run 2 Moray of Greed. These are mostly in here, just in case you accidentally open up the Death's Frogs early on and don't have a means to summon them. Plus, with the Tribute special summon for your frog monsters, they have to be from the deck. So if you open up any in your hand, you can't really use Substitoad to special summon them from the hand. At least use Moray of Greed to shuffle them back and then draw into hopefully some more useful cards. For more of the power-up plays along with the Wetlands, I run 2 Aquarium Stage and 1 Aquarium Set. All water monsters gain 300 attack and defense for the Aquarium Set, and then other water monsters cannot be destroyed by battle. So along with the Substitoad protection, you have the Aquarium Stage to protect your Substitoads, since it just makes all your frog monsters unable to be destroyed by battle, which the Substitoad does have 2,000 defense, making it pretty difficult for your opponent's other monsters to get over it. You just want to rely on Aquarium Stage as an added backup for protection. And then for the one-ofs for the spells, I run 1 for 1. You can either use this to summon out your Substitoad or get out your Trade Toad onto the field with these cards. And also 1 Monster Reborn as another resource to get from the graveyard. 1 Change of Heart, so you can take one of your opponent's monsters and then use it for the tribute for your Substitoad. So just taking that own resource to get a frog monster is really, really cool. And also 1 Terraforming just for searching out the Wetlands field spell to your hand. And then the only trap that I run is just a fun tech, and that is Froggy Force Field. If you didn't want to run this card, you can always just run Submarine Toad. That was also an option if you didn't want to run the Death Frog play. You can take out the Death Frogs for Submarine Frog, and then have the additional 2 Death Croaking taken out for the additional copies of Froggy Force Field. This just destroys all of your opponent's attack position monsters when a face-up frog you control is selected as an attack target. So they really don't see this coming most of the time when they're worried about some other scary cards that we run in the deck. For those scary cards, we'll now be moving on to the extra deck. I do want to run 3 Totally Awesome. I just have 2, sadly, so I am replacing 1 with Paleozoic Opabinia. So then you run 3 of this. This card did not get hit on the ban list. Sadly, that was Ronin Totem's job. So we can still run 3 Totally Awesome for this deck. Just having this boss monster to rely on top of the plays we can use in the main deck is the scariest part of this deck. It just has a special summon play for your frog monsters and also an Omnigate against your opponent, with you being able to take that resource for your own. I also run 1 Cat Shark for the double attack play, the 1 Phantom Knights of Cursed Javelin for getting over some pesky opponent's monsters, 1 Sky Cavalry Centaria for the same reason, and then the 1 Zeus to overlay into after you've attacked with your Xyz monster. For the Link monsters, I run 1 Relinquish Anima for the level 1 monsters, Salmon Great Almirage for the lower level setup in the graveyard to then special summon back with cards like Surface, 1 Link Rebo, once again for the level 1 monsters to play a more defensive role on the field. And for the other Link 2 monsters, we're going with 2 Marine Cess Coral Anemone for the special summon of our water monsters with 1500 or less attack from our graveyard back onto the field, 2 Miss Starboy for the power-up play on the field, and the 1 area, the Water Charmer, so you have more special summon resources of some other water monsters your opponent may have in their own graveyard. As for some of the go-to plays in the deck, you can rely on Swap Frog a lot for the graveyard setup. If you just discard another water monster in your hand, you can then send one from your deck, so to special summon this card. So depending on what frog monster you have, let's just say you have Unifrog and this card in your hand. And then if we're going for more of the play setup, if you have cards like Surface in your hand, you may have the initial play to set up all you need for your go-to Death Frog combo. With this, you will then discard Unifrog off of the Swap Frog, special summoning this card, and then be able to send the additional frog to your graveyard. The one you'll send is Substitoad. With that, you then have your play to summon out your go-to Unifrog, and then all on top of this, if you have these 2 cards, you had the Unifrog, the Swap Frog, the 2 Surface, and then also just 1 additional frog monster in your hand, because that is what you'll use for your normal summon since you special summoned the Swap Frog and had the Unifrog in your graveyard and you sent the Substitute. It can be vice versa if you open up these cards. So then you'll summon out Swap Frog with that special summon, normal summon out the Flip Flop Frog, and with that you will then activate your Surface to first summon out the Substitute and then use the second one to summon out the Unifrog, and then that just gives you the 3 monsters on the field, because then since Substitute is not a once per turn, you contribute all 3 of the other frog monsters to then summon out your 3 Death Frog onto the field. Now going first, this would just give you 4 additional resources onto the field. You can even continue the tributes for the Substitute since, like I said, it's not a once per turn, but with this you have your 3 Death Frogs on the field. You don't have to do any destroy by battles for your tadpoles to do so, and if you went second and potentially drew into the Death Croaking on your 6th card draw, this can be used to destroy any of the setup your opponent may have had trying to go first against you, and then giving you the 3 Death Frogs on the field as the means to do so. But then you can just use the Substitute to tribute out the 3 Death Frogs to get then 3 new monsters on the field, whether it be just a Unifrog or even just the Dupe Frog for that name. You can even skip this whole step and then just go for the 3 Dupe Frogs, because then you can use the 2 additional Dupe Frogs to overlay into your Totally Awesome, and then using the other cards like Substitute, or even being able to tribute the Substitute to get out another level 2 monster in which you can overlay into a second copy of Totally Awesome. So then you'd have this tribute option to get 2 Totally Awesome on the field after using the combo with the Death Frog destruction against your opponent. The main reason I would say to tribute into the Death Frogs would be just to have this play set up, the deck thinned out as well, and then potentially if you want to swing into your opponent, you will be dealing a bit more damage with 3 Death Frog than just the 2 Totally Awesome, which you can attack with the Death Frogs first and then attack with the or then just set up the Totally Awesomes to have the negates and special summons the following turn. Some more of the bounce power will also just come into the fact if you go second. Once again, if you didn't open up the play for the Death Croaking, let's say you opened up the Wetlands as your 6 card draw, you can at least activate that. Then with the same setup you had with the Substitute on the field, have the frog monsters needed to at least hit for some pretty big damage since it's all the level 2 or lower. Gaining an additional 1200 here is a total of 4800 on top of their own effects, having a destruction play, and then even the bounce back for Swap Frog for the additional normal summon of another one, which could be used for either flipping and then bouncing other cards your opponent may control. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, this is a pretty fun deck, especially with all the shenanigans you can get into with Substitute now being at 1 on the ban list. Like I said, we did lose Ronin Totem, but you still have options to make a pretty fun frog deck altogether for the pure play that you're meant to do with the cards like Death Frog and Death Croaking. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.